Then on Sports Central, we go for our next team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Oklahoma State Cowboys, a team that went 7-6 overall in the 2022 season. Not a bad season for Oklahoma State. This team didn't quite finish out the season as strong as they started, but still not a bad year for this team. But how will they be in 2023, and where does this team stand as we look forward to 2023? We'll be talking about it here today. We'll be analyzing this team and predict their schedule game by game in this video. Let's get started with a quick recap of 2022. Once again, the record was 7-6, and this team got out to a 5-0 start. They were looking really good heading into the TCU matchup, which they lost in double overtime, and that was a pretty disappointing loss at the time. Still is. I mean, a double overtime loss, no matter what, is always going to be disappointing, and it just so happened to come up against a team that eventually went to the national championship in TCU. But I mean, you look at the first part of the season, they had a really strong win over Baylor on the road, beat Texas Tech 41-31. Turns out Texas Tech was a good team last season, but we kind of knew from the start back in week one when they took on Central Michigan. They won the game 58-44. They had no problems on offense, but defensively, allowing 44 points in that game definitely was a bit concerning. I mean, that was borderline shootout there against Central Michigan in week one. But otherwise, a strong start to the season. They lost to TCU, then beat Texas the next week, 41-34. That was also an excellent win, but then got shut out against Kansas State. That's quite a turnaround there. An excellent win over Texas, and then getting shut out by Kansas State 48-0 the very next week on the road. So that was tough, and they also lost to Kansas 37-16. So after those two losses, this team was pretty much out of contention for the Big 12. I mean, the first half of the season, this was probably the one of, if not the Big 12 favorite, but then they had those two losses, and that really put a dent in those hopes. But then beat Iowa State by 6, lost to Oklahoma on the road, lost to West Virginia, and then lost to Wisconsin in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl by a touchdown to finish out the season. So maybe a disappointing finish to the season. It was a strong start, 7-6, still not a bad season for this team. But with that, it's time to take a look into the future. Let's look at your roster preview heading into the season. Spencer Sanders is transferring out, a longtime quarterback for Oklahoma State. He's been around for a while, but he is headed off, and it is on to Alan Bowman now, the Texas Tech Michigan transfer quarterback. Really didn't play for Michigan the past couple of years, and so he's coming in with not much experience in the past couple of seasons. He's still a quarterback with potential. He's been in the Big 12. I mean, he played for Texas Tech a decent amount, and so we'll see what he can do as likely the starting quarterback of this team. You lose your top running back, Dominic Richardson. You return your second running back in Ole Gordon. In the receiving core, you lose your second, third, and fourth wideouts, Bryson Green, Braden Johnson, and John Paul Richardson, but you do bring back Brennan Presley. So you got your top receiver coming back, your second running back, and of course, Alan Bowman coming in from Michigan, but of course really didn't have much of a name at Michigan as he really didn't play the last couple of seasons. So it's going to be interesting seeing what Alan Bowman can do. I mean, he really hasn't been on the football field too much since 2020. So it's been a little while. I mean, he's got experience in the Big 12 though, and that definitely does bring, I would say, some promise to Oklahoma State. But do lose one on the O-line, 3 defensive linemen, 2 linebackers, and then 4 in the secondary. So defensively, there's a moderate amount of losses as well. Just something to keep in mind. And there's no line here. This is a team that is losing a significant amount of players. This is a team that isn't going to be quite as experienced in 2023 as maybe they were in 2022. So there is definitely a reason to temper your expectations for this team. I do think this is going to be a good team still. I don't think this team is going to be bad by any means. But, I mean, we've seen a few times in the past few years where Oklahoma State has been a contender in the Big 12. They've done really well, made it to the Big 12 title game, and even have been a national contender. I just don't know if 2023 is going to be that type of season. Once again, I see this team being good in 2023. I just don't know if they're going to be great, knowing some of the inexperience of this team, and there's just a few question marks as well. But looking at the transfer portal and recruiting now, so Spencer Sanders, mentioned him, he's off to Ole Miss. Alan Bowman coming in from Michigan. Richardson, your top running back, off to Baylor. But you got Elijah Collins coming in from Michigan State. I do think he shows potential, so keep an eye on him. Deshaun Stribling is coming in from Washington State. Arlen Bruce IV as well from Iowa. So you got a couple of receivers coming in. Expect Stribling to have an immediate impact for sure. John Paul Richardson's off to TCU, Bryson Green off to Wisconsin. Same with Steven Johnson, who's off to Houston. Josiah Johnson's coming in from UMass, which don't be fooled by UMass. He's actually going to be a key player for this team. He is expected to be the top tight end for this team as we look forward to 2023. Leon Johnson III is coming in from George Fox. You also lose Langston Anderson, receiver. Dalton Cooper, offensive tackle, coming in from Texas State. And then you're losing a couple of defensive linemen, but Justin Kirkland coming in from Utah Tech. Expect him to definitely have an immediate impact. Anthony Goodlow, edge rusher, is coming in from Tulsa. You lose Mason Cobb. You also lose Jabbar Muhammad, Thomas Harper, DeMarco Jones, and then Braylon Presley. But you do bring in Justin Wright and then Kenneth Harris defensively from Tulsa and Arkansas State, respectively. So overall, the transfer portal, you're losing a few key players for sure, but at least you're adding some depth back, which is definitely a key factor. Recruiting-wise, could be better. 54th nationally, 9th in the Big 12. You got 21 three-stars coming in. So you got several three-star recruits coming in, and I'm not saying, Mike Gundy knows how to develop players, that's for sure, but the recruiting definitely could be better for this team. Obviously, a few losses in the transfer portal. And because of that, I do have this team at a 7 out of 10 on the future forecast meter. That's maybe a bit lower than some teams you'll see, but a 7 out of 10, I still expect this team to have a great future. I do think this is a team that's in a good position. I do think it could be better with some of the inexperience on this team. 2023 might not be the year that this team is a big contender, but I do think in the future, this is still a team that has got the potential to get back to that point. But that said, let's take a look at the schedules we look forward to 2023. So you got Central Arkansas in week 1. Easy game against an FCS opponent. Should take care of them, no problem. And then it's off to Tempe to take on Arizona State. That's an interesting matchup there. Arizona State, of course, in their situation, new head coach and everything. And then you got South Alabama week 3, Iowa State to kick off the conference schedule week 4, and then you got Kansas State after your bye. You do have an early bye week here. And then Kansas at home after that, West Virginia on the road, Cincinnati at home, and then Oklahoma at home, and then UCF and Houston both on the road, and then BYU at home to finish out the regular season. So you are playing all 4 of the Big 12 newcomers in Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, and BYU. All 4 of those games are in your last 5. So an interesting schedule for Oklahoma State. But looking at your first 4 games here, Central Arkansas, take care of them, no problem. Easy win. And then you go to Arizona State. This is a one that I'm definitely going back and forth on. You beat them last season. Arizona State, definitely a team that's in a rebuild. But you could say the same about Oklahoma State. I am going to favor Arizona State there. I do think a close matchup. One that definitely should be able to go either way. But I do want to favor Arizona State with them being at home there in a close one. And then South Alabama, easy win. Iowa State on the road. This one's also one that I go back and forth on. I do think you take maybe 1 or 2 disappointing losses at the beginning of the season. I do think Iowa State is going to be an improved team in 2023. So a road trip there, I do think you lose that one as well. But both Arizona State and Iowa State are winnable games. So you're 2-2 heading into October. K-State, Kansas. I do think you lose to both teams at home. Kansas State next season. Will Howard, I like them a lot. I wouldn't be surprised one bit if they won the Big 12 again in 2023. They're looking really good right now. And Kansas, of course, definitely on the rise right now. Kansas, for them, 6-6 is like a miracle. But I wouldn't be surprised if they got back there again in 2023. They're looking pretty good as well for their standards. I wouldn't be surprised if they got back to a bowl game. And they also beat you last season significantly. So I do want to take Kansas there in a close matchup. You come back and get a couple of nice wins against West Virginia on the road, and then Cincinnati. I do think you'd be the Bearcats. Cincinnati, I just don't think is going to be a really good team next season. Of course, Luke Fickell's now gone. So I see Cincinnati being in a rebuild phase at the beginning of their Big 12 or in their time in the Big 12. But so you're 4-4 heading into November. You got to win a couple games to get to bowl season. I do think you do that. I think you get a huge win here against Oklahoma. This is a one that, you would think, oh, they lost to Kansas. Why would they beat Oklahoma? But I do think, you got some good momentum coming off of the West Virginia and Cincinnati wins. You got Oklahoma at home. I do think you get a nice win here against your rival in the Sooners, and that's going to be probably your signature win of the season there. So I do like that one. And then UCF and Houston. I think you lose to both UCF and Houston. UCF especially, I do see being a tough one. Houston's a beatable team as well, but I do think you slip up a bit in that matchup. I think that's going to be a common theme in 2023 for this team. With some of that inexperience, is going to be those close losses. And then BYU, you beat them, a good win to finish out the regular season. You get up to 6-6, you're headed to bowl season. And 6-6, it's not pretty by any means, but I do think, considering some of the inexperience of this team, you should be happy with 6-6, honestly. And if this team can go above and beyond that, maybe get up to 8 or 9 wins, that puts you right up there in contention for the Big 12. I do think the Big 12 is going to be pretty top heavy. I think we'll see maybe 3 or 4 10-win teams in the Big 12. I don't think we see a major standout like we did last season in TCU. I do think it's going to be pretty top heavy. So honestly, 10 wins could win you the conference this upcoming season. But looking at the range, I do think the ceiling is 9-3. That's the best possible record you could have. 4-8 is the worst. I've got you at 6-6. Honestly, my bet 6 to 7 wins, right around there for sure. For the Cowboys this season. I mean, you look at this schedule. Arizona State's a very winnable game. If you can flip that one, you're already up to 7 wins. And you consider Iowa State, Kansas, both very beatable teams. Even Houston. I mean, you win a couple of those, you're suddenly up to 9. So 9 is within reason for this team. But once again, I'm not too confident in Alan Bowman yet. Some of the inexperience of this team as well. I mean, the defense, I don't know if it's going to be much better. So that's why I've got this team at 6-6, maybe kind of on the lower end of what Mike Gundy's done with Oklahoma State. But I do think 6-6 for the inexperienced, still not a bad season. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts in the comments below, especially if you're an Oklahoma State fan. And I appreciate you guys all watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll catch you on the next one.